I came across a video last week that was actually posted a few years ago. As of right now, the video has over 9 million views because the story is obviously pretty touching. In the video, we learn about a man who keeps messing up over and over again and can't stop doing what he's doing. The sad part is the punishment and the threats that he gets from the courts and the judges don't seem to be motivating him to change his behavior and how he lives his life.
A few years ago, Joe Cerna was arrested for drunk driving. As part of his probation, he wasn't allowed to drink.
Even though he knows how he should live, he just continues to just mess up. And once again, he finds himself in court because he messed up yet again.
So when he lied about a recent urine test, the judge felt he had no choice.
I knew what Joe was going through, and I knew Joe's history.
Retired Army Sergeant First Class Joe Cerna did 3 tours in Afghanistan and has 2 Purple Hearts to show for it. The Green Beret survived an IED and a suicide bomber. But he says his scariest moment was the night he was riding in a truck with 3 other soldiers.
How many guys got out of that truck?
Alive?
Yeah.
Just me. I was a sole survivor.
Joe says it still haunts him.
So I suffer from PTSD.
Among his issues,
Then I would drink.
a fear of being in small, cramped places.
Now, the guy in the story actually gets lucky to find himself in front of a judge that actually feels bad for him. But even though the judge feels sympathy for the man, the judge still has to be just. He can't compromise his justice because he still has to punish the man for what he did wrong. So the judge has to sentence the man to time in jail.
I gave Joe a night in jail because he had to be held accountable.
But rather than just sentencing the man and just leaving it at that, the judge decides to enter into the man's jail cell with the man and suffer the punishment with the man as an act of love.
I knew what Joe was going through, and I knew Joe's history, and he had to be held accountable, but I just felt I had to go with him. I felt I had to go with him.
When I walked into the jail cell and they closed the door behind me, I started feeling this anxiety.
It came back.
It came back, a flashback.
And so, a few minutes after Joe was locked up, Judge Lou Oliveira surprised the man he sent to jail by joining him for the entire night.
We ate meatloaf, and we talked about a lot of things.
We talked about our families.
And the walls got further apart.
The walls just got, they didn't exist anymore. He brought me back to North Carolina from being in a truck in Afghanistan.
But while watching the video, I realized that this story sounds a lot like what we read about in the Bible, but different. In the Bible, we see humans to be in a similar situation to the man in the story. Men continually use their free will to mess up over and over again, even though that they know that they shouldn't, and they know how they ought to live their lives. No matter how hard they try, they continue to fail not only God's standards, but even their own standards. And even though they know how they should live, they still use their freedom in order to choose to do the wrong things. Now, when it comes to the Bible, of course, the judge is God. God is not only just, but he's a perfectly just judge. So if the judge in the story couldn't just blink at the man's wrongdoings and just let him go without any consequences, how much greater is that of a perfectly just judge? A perfectly just judge would have to punish any and all wrongdoings. But in the Bible, God is also perfect in mercy. The judge in the story was very merciful, but not perfectly merciful. In God's perfect mercy, God, the judge, punts on human flesh and not only comes into our jail cell with us, but he comes into our jail cell to set us free from jail. In the man's story, the judge came to suffer with the man as an act of love and mercy. But when it comes to God in the Bible, God came to suffer not just with us, but for us as an act of love and mercy. Jesus took the punishment for us himself and offers to pay the penalty for all of us who accept his offer. But that's not where this story ends. I want you to notice what else happened in this story.
That meant so much to me, sir.
I know.
This week, Joe promised the judge no more mess-ups.
I don't want to let you down, ever.
Sometimes jail is not what a man needs. Sometimes the best sentence
Love you.
is compassion.
Thank you for breathing me.
No, you got
Steve Hartman, On the Road.
You notice in the story, the man was changed, not because of fear of punishment, but instead because of the love and mercy that he received. After realizing that the judge came in there to suffer with him, he said that he wasn't going to let the judge down and that he was going to do better. Now, this reminds me of our walk with Christ. Once we realize that God isn't just sitting up there in heaven watching all of us suffer and drowning in our own sins, but instead he decides to come into our world, not only to suffer with us, but to suffer for us. It changes us. Once we realize that we're no longer condemned, this allows us to be a lot more honest with ourselves and with other people, and it allows for us to look deeper and realize that we need to be forgiven for far more than we ever could have imagined. If you've ever received a gift from someone that you were just blown away by, and all you could start thinking about was how you didn't deserve it, what was your reaction to receiving that gift? Did you say, yes, I got the gift, now I can just go ahead and treat this person like crap and never talk to him again? Of course that's not how you reacted. Instead, you start thinking about how you want to show your appreciation for what they've done and what they've given you, even though you know that you don't really have to, you're not obligated to. As a result of their gift, you feel more bonded to the person and more thankful that they paid for the gift for your benefit, not their own. It cost them so much, but then they offered it to you for free. In a similar way, in Christianity, that's what motivates our desire to serve God, not because we have to, but because we get to. We don't serve God and honor God out of fear, but instead we do so for thankfulness for the most precious gift that we could ever have, and giving us what our souls ultimately desire the deepest for all of eternity. The truth of the gospel and our thankfulness for it changes everything in our lives, including how we see things like marriage. Go ahead and click on this video to see what I mean. But the next time you find yourself always being motivated by fear instead of grace and thankfulness, what are you gonna say?
What do you mean?